All right. Welcome to today's webinar. Thanks everyone for joining. We're going to go ahead and just get started here. As Bill O'Reilly says, we're going to do it live. So let's go ahead and get started. Appreciate you taking time out of your afternoon or morning here. And really excited to connect with you all here. So today we're going to be going over technical certification for Density Partners. My name is Adam Sewell. I'm our VP of Sales here at Density, and I'm joined by Scarlett Lai. Scarlett, you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm the implementation manager here at Density.
Awesome. So it's been a really interesting and busy year here at Density. Many of you on the call, we'd love to get to questions. If you have questions, quick protocol note. There's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. As we go through the material, feel free to ask questions. We'll get to those at the end of the presentation here. But in a lot of conversations we've had with partners, it's become apparent that there's additional things that we as Density can be doing to help enable your technical teams. And so we've been putting some thought and effort into investing and structuring a more thorough program from a training perspective. And the goal of this session is to kind of provide an overview of what the different pieces of that training program look like and how to actually install our entry sensor. Talk about how we can be successful together in market, and then we'll cover some Q&A. So again, can't thank you enough for joining this call. Also, just for the record, I'm here as the sales representative. I can provide context into how our customers are using our technology, how they get value, some of the customer use cases that come up, and some of the commercial elements of some of these conversations. Scarlett is our resident expert when it comes to getting these sensors installed properly, getting them working, and getting your customers up and running successfully. So if you hear me say some technical things, just know that I might be dangerous there a little bit. So Scarlett, keep me honest. Okay, cool. So, I imagine many of you are already familiar with Density, given that you joined this webinar, but just to review, our entry sensor creates kind of a network of sensors, and they go over typically a doorway or a threshold, and they work as a network. And so really the sensors are designed to help corporate real estate teams, workplace teams, facility management teams understand how their spaces are utilized. And the sensors serve that data in real time and make it accessible via purpose-built software. So we have Dashboard, which is our web application. We have iOS and Android apps. And you can do a bunch of different stuff. Specifically around 2020, we've seen a lot of interest in occupancy monitoring, so ensuring that spaces do not get overcrowded. Obviously, amid COVID, it's front of mind for everybody. So we're helping organizations either keep existing staff in a work environment safe around occupancy, as well as corporate offices that are going to be reopening, helping them reopen safely and then start planning for the future in terms of what 2020 will look like. So really the value props are keeping people safe amid COVID, simplifying your real estate planning, and reducing operating expenses by either divesting of existing space or otherwise finding ways to operate your space more efficiently. The safe solution that I mentioned specifically, I know many of you are it's front of mind for you, but there's three primary components that I would at least set context here. Once your sensors are installed, this is what you can deliver to the end customer. You can display occupancy outside of common spaces, break rooms, restrooms, cafeterias, other spaces where it's difficult to understand how many people are actually going to show up. You can alert, the end customer can alert their staff when occupancy approaches or exceeds a safe level, and then there's an analytics suite there as well. But to get to all of this, you obviously need to deploy Density's entry sensor accurately and to specification, and that's really the focus of this session. Happy to talk about customers, but we're here to talk about the technical certification program and the entry sensor specifics. But just want to share this slide. We continue to grow very rapidly throughout 2020, heading into next year, especially as many of these and other types of names start to reopen their office buildings. We're seeing a huge upswing in interest from these and other names. And so really, if you have a customer base and you'd like to sell Density, that's another flag. I'm happy to make myself or my team available to help sell some of those deals with you. Okay, so enough preamble. We're going to kind of get into the meat of the presentation here. You've got a customer, we bring you a deal, whatever the case may be, you're ready to do a project. How do you partner with Density? to do that installation successfully. And Scarlett, I'll provide the overview. Feel free to interrupt me, as you see fit. Keep me honest. What we've seen is like anything else. So, one of the phrases I find myself saying is installing our entry sensor is a lot like installing a network connected security camera, in that you plug it into a network, it gets outbound access, and that device starts sending data. It's very unlike a camera in that the location and height where the sensor can be installed requires a little bit extra thought and attention to detail. So with a camera, you can just kind of like hang it, aim it, and you're off to the races. You can be off by a few inches or even a couple feet, and you can still get a good field of view. With density, the accuracy, the precision at which the height of the sensor and kind of where along a door x-axis it's installed matter a lot. We're going to talk a lot about that in this session. So that's all to say, when working with density, we kind of adopt a crawl, walk, run philosophy. So we want to make sure that you have a clear path to success. And this is, primarily how that looks if you're starting out as a new partner. The process roughly looks like, we've got a customer who says, yep, I'm interested. The next step is typically to get a floor plan. Density, Scarlett and her team will assist in producing an initial scope for you, placing sensors on that floor plan. We can walk that customer through the rough sensor count, what type of data they would get. The real objective there is to start laying the groundwork for a site walk and also get budgetary approval from the end customer on a rough order of magnitude. So look at a floor plan and we'll walk you through what this looks like. It's roughly 10 sensors. Here would be the approximate cost. Are you okay with that budget? And can we be invited on for a site walk? The site walk, this is why density partners are so integral and important to us and our team. You all are really fantastic with owning that last mile of service. That's where you would go on, walk the site, collect pictures and measurements. We'll talk about this, and then provide that back to density. Scarlett and her team will use that information to produce what we call a deployment plan, which is a very prescriptive and detailed plan on where and how to deploy the sensors. You get sign off from the partner, deliver that quote, sign off from the customer, deliver that quote, and you're off to the races for installation, calibration, and et cetera. So at a high level, this is kind of the approach on how if you're an early partner with density, how you partner with us. Now, our goal obviously is to enable you all to be as independent as possible. It doesn't do us any good. It doesn't do you any good if you can't kind of run on your own, using that metaphor. So this is a new thing that we've put together. We've introduced 3 levels of technical certification for our partners. And we won't go into super detail here, but if you're on this call, chances are you're either a level 1 or level 2 partner. What you can see on the right there is some basic requirements. So you may have seen an installation quiz. In order to achieve level 1 technical certification, you need to pass that installation quiz and then successfully install your demo sensor. And Scarlett and her team give you a thumbs up. You're level 1 certified. Now the level 2. Do you have any color there or anything you want to add?
No, that sounds really good.
Okay, great. So then the next level where we want to get folks is you've completed 3 site walks as part of Density's sales process. You've delivered scoping plans, assisted with Scarlett and her team. So get to become familiar with what's required to develop a scoping plan. And then Scarlett and her team will work with you on actually developing a deployment plan. We'll show you an example of what that looks like. You do that, you're a level 2 certified partner. And then level 3, which is the rarest of the rare, but hopefully we get more of you folks who get level 3. That's where you are becoming more independent. Your teams are becoming more confident in their ability to scope, create deployment plans, and then run that installation on your own. And really, our goal is to provide the curriculum and information that you need so that you can work your way up to level 3. Now, one thing to note, most of our level 3 partners, we are, if our sales team has a large opportunity, we want to bring it to a partner. If you are technically certified and you're more independent, we're more likely to bring that to a level 3 partner. That's just kind of the rules of the business. Level 1, it's mostly going to be generated on your end and your sales team, bringing deals to us. And so in terms of our objective, obviously we want to bring more deals to you all. And as part of that, we would ask that you kind of invest some time on the technical certification stuff. So breaking that horizontal kind of plan out, as you crawl, walk, run, you're going to become more autonomous and independent. And so this is just an overview. We'll provide this presentation after the webinar here. But essentially, if you're a level 1 partner, you're really leaning on Density's team to create the baseline material scoping and deployment plans to become successful. Level 2, you're starting to lead some of those activities, but Scarlett and her team are there to assist you, answer questions, and also to give you a thumbs up when they say, yep, this deployment plan looks good. Yep, this scoping plan looks good. And then when you get to level 3, you're really kind of working on your own. We obviously always want to check in and make sure if you have questions, if your technician's like, I don't know where the sensor should go, a quick email or phone call is all that's needed to get an answer to that. And then you're kind of really operating in a more independent capacity. So that's the overview. I'm going to pass it over to Scarlett now, and we're going to talk specifically about our entry sensor, which is that sensor that goes over a threshold or a doorway.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So this is just a quick overview of what the sensor looks like and the different components of the sensor. So you'll see on the back of the sensor, there's an RJ45 jack. This is where the sensor is going to get network and power through the Ethernet cable. We do ask that that cable is a Cat5e or above cable, and that goes directly into a switch, preferably that provides 30 watts of power, PoE+, or an injector that allows for the same amount of power. On the left of that, you'll see a Wi-Fi Bluetooth dongle that's usually seated in here. It's a little blue dongle that sits in here. Please don't remove that. That is for if we need Wi-Fi provisioning. Also, it helps us troubleshoot the sensor after install with our setup app. So when you see that in there, please don't remove that. That's critical for the boards to run properly and also for us to be able to reach the sensor for troubleshooting. The sensors are mounted in multiple ways. We do have mounting kits that allow the sensor to be attached to walls or ceilings. And you'll see that on the back, there's a standard wall bracket that is on the sensor's back, and that is usually removed and attached to the wall with the pill-shaped holes. Adam, would you mind going back to the
Sure, yeah, sorry.
Overview? Sorry. So the pill shapes on the back get attached to the wall with 2 screws and anchors that comes in the box, and it's locked in with the hex key that is also provided in the box. That secures the sensor to the wall surface for a surface mount. An option is to remove the mount arm and drop the sensor from the ceiling with a 1/4 inch 20 threaded rod. And the lid of the sensor itself has the threads to take that rod. So much like any AV install that you're commonly installing, it just takes that and it sits flush to the ceiling with a soft ceiling tile or hard ceiling, and all of that is included with our mount kit. What we don't provide in our mount kit is the rod itself, because we would need it to be cut to length depending on where it's prescribed to be dropped. So please make sure that you are bringing those if you are ceiling mounting them. On the front of the device, there's a white LED light that should come on when the sensor is working. And then on the sensor black screen here, you'll see an IR window where you should see the 4 red lasers to say that the sensor is working. We ask, there's a protective film that goes on this when it comes in the box. We ask that you do not take off the protective film to prevent the screen from having any fingerprints or smudges until you see the white light and you see the 4 red lasers come online. That way we know everything is working, the sensor is counting before you peel off that protective film to keep this as clean as possible during install.
Yeah, so if you've done camera installations similar, you don't want to touch the lens, creates a bunch of extra work for you. So fingerprints not recommended. And Scarlett, go ahead, go for it.
Oh, just one more last point. That serial number is super important. After post-install, I'm going to ask what serial number went above which doorway. This is important for us to tie the sensor to the doorway and figure out if the traffic is passing inside or outside the room. So please make sure to note that serial number somewhere in which doorway it went on before you mount this on the sensor to prevent you from having to climb up on a ladder to read that number again after install.
Great. And is that serial number on the box as well, or is it just on the device?
It's on the box along with the MAC addresses if whitelisting is required, and all the other information about the sensor.
Got it. And Scarlett, you mentioned So this is just an example of what the entry sensor is. Imagine many of you are already familiar with how the sensor works, but it's using infrared light to measure depth and then counting in exits and entrances at the same time, ignoring all non-human behavior. But Scarlett, you mentioned kind of mounting options. Like, what would you say? Obviously, the standard mount comes in the box. If you had to say, like, what mounting options do you see most often getting requested and shipped out?
Yeah, so the standard wall mount is our most popular option. It comes in the box, it's included. Ceiling mounting is really popular for those with lower ceiling heights, or it needs to be slightly in front of a door, or there are obstructions at the door. So that's the one we see most often. And if they have tall door frames or super high ceilings, we do see the door frame mounts often. And that screws directly into the frame with a bracket that sits on the back of the device. Glass and adhesive mounts, I just want to make a call out that requires a 72-hour curing process. So once you have designed where the sensor is going to go, please peel off the VHB backing and then put that on and press it in with a roller and leave that for 72 hours before you hang the weight of the sensor on that mount.
Great. And like, walk us through, one thing I see in the field a lot is, and this took me, I came from a camera company, so I didn't fully appreciate why sensor height installation matters so much. If you could provide some context there, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, like the graphic that Adam previously shared, our sensor works by shining active infrared light and a cone shape from the sensor. And that light needs to be able to cover the person walking through the threshold in order for them to count +1 and -1 to the cloud. So we want to make sure that sensor is high enough and is covering the width of the doorway in order to catch that person walking through the threshold. So our minimum mount height is 90 inches, which is 7.5 feet. And our maximum sensor height is 120 or 10 feet. And that is all dictated by the width of the threshold. The wider your threshold, the higher the sensor needs to go, bearing any obstructions that are blocking the sensor's IR light.
Got it. And so just to call this out, on that single door, if that person was if that sensor was, if you have people walking on the outside of you had a very wide door and you only had one sensor and you had people walking on the outside of the cone, that person would not be counted. And this is why the height and width specifications matter quite a bit. And again, Scarlett and our team are here to answer questions and help you understand this and make sure that we're avoiding issues where we might not be able to get as high accuracy or even create some other issues downstream. So it's always better to, if you're ever doubtful, you're like looking at a door and you're like, I don't know, like, that's why Scarlett and her team are here for you. And so, yeah, placement. Talk to us about this as well, Scarlett.
Yeah, additionally, where that sensor goes above the door, left, right, middle, center, is super important because of that cone of IR light. Don't worry, we usually with our deployment plans, as long as you give me good measurements, the width of the door, the height of the door, I will prescribe for you exactly where that needs to go, X and Y, how high it needs to be, and left or right. Sometimes we offset the doors for single sensors, so the person is under where the door handle is, and we are sure to have counted them when they're grabbing for the door handle to open or push the door. So we will prescribe all of these if we get correct measurements and pictures from you for the deployment plan, which is why uploading those documents and pictures to us is so important.
Yeah, and I would just share again, coming from a camera company, it took me, the learning curve on this stuff is a little bit steep at first, but once you understand like the underlying specifications, it becomes fairly intuitive. You can look at a door and say, okay, I see an exit sign, I'm going to mount it to the right. And especially if you're a level 1 or level 2 partner, continue to lean on us. We're here for you to answer those questions and set you up for success.
If your doorway is greater than 7.5 feet wide and you don't have the ceiling height to clear the 10 feet maximum, sometimes we put two sensors next to each other and they talk to each other to create essentially two cones of IR light, and that groups that one wide hallway together to measure anybody who's walking within that space. For this, what we do need is which sensor went on the left, which sensor went on the right, and very precise measurements of how far the sensors are from each other, centered to centered. I want to call out that if we are doing these what we call multi-point installs, it's really paramount that the sensors are always installed in parallel and in line with each other. We can't have sensors offset, and we can't have them tilted slightly away from each other. Pizza, not French fry. We prefer French fry. And we just want to make sure that the installs are very clean next to each other at a precise distance apart. That allows the sensors to talk to each other, and we're able to deduplicate whoever walks right down the middle within the view of the two sensors.
Did you just say French fry? Was that what I heard?
Yeah, we say French fry, not pizza.
Not pizza slice. It's like skiing, but
Like
with
skiing.
PoE connected hardware instead. Okay, great. And then in terms of, and this is kind of just like setting the table here, in terms of power networking requirements, all of this stuff is available in our partner portal as well as on our website. But things to call out with a sensor, it's the 802.3 AT standard, so it is PoE plus, meaning that the sensor needs 30 watts of steady power to be effective. You will see if the sensor is not getting enough power, it'll send an alert. We can contact you, and you can go diagnose that. Our recommended approach for deployment is using PoE switches. It's the most straightforward. It's the most scalable. It's easier to deploy and provision the sensors. So especially for larger deployments, 50 sensors or greater, PoE plus switch is definitely going to be preferred method. And this is a great opportunity if you're a partner who does provide, does sell other, networking gear and other things. It's a great opportunity for you to sell that in and provide the end solution to our customers and yours. You can power the sensor with a PoE injector, a PoE plus injector, and then connect via Wi-Fi, and that can be a good option for kind of smaller deployments. The networking requirements, are there. We can deploy an LTE modem like a Cradlepoint or a Peplink or similar type device. Usually we see that as kind of an option if customers will not permit other sensors to be on their corporate network. You can deploy these on a VLAN. There's a bunch of different options. Our recommendation is to use DHCP. We can support static IP if that's something that is absolutely required by the end customer's IT team. And then questions that come up around network and data security, we have a whole bunch of information security policy stuff that we can share with you if InfoSec comes up with your end customers. But what you need to know really is that there's just a handful of domains that you'll need to whitelist if there's a firewall in place so the sensor can get out. The device makes only outbound connections over port 443, so very secure. Data is encrypted in transit at rest. We work with some of the largest companies in the world. We've passed our information security policies. The device has a very rigorous and strong security posture. And then the last thing I'll say is part of the Density software subscription includes regular and automatic firmware and software upgrades. And so you as a service provider, you don't need to go and update these manually one by one. That's included as part of the service. It's part of the value add that you can bring to your customers. And that includes, updates to our algorithm set, patches from a security standpoint, other improvements to the device, and that happens on about a monthly cadence and doesn't interrupt service. Okay, so that's kind of the high level kind of contours of Entropy Sensor. If you have any questions, please enter them. We'll get to them at the end. But now what we wanted to do is at least provide you a high level tour of those steps that we cited at the beginning. So all projects start with some sort of scoping exercise or ROM budget approval. And Scarlett will kind of walk us through what that looks like.
Sure. So, excuse me. The first what we need from a customer is a floor plan, preferably one that is recent and preferably where all the walls and elevators and stairs and everything is current. It's important for us to mark out from the customer what they're trying to measure. Are they trying to measure specific rooms, the whole floor, the whole building, specific amenity areas that they want to highlight? And the goal for this is just to get an understanding of why the customer wants density, what we can help them achieve with these sensors, and deliver a floor plan that is a scope for you to do the site walk.
Yeah, and I would chime in, amid COVID in this year, the two things that we're really helping customers with is keeping staff members safe, specifically around, restrooms, break rooms, cafeterias, other areas that people typically congregate. And then the second is as people come back in a work environment, understanding overall utilization. If you state that you're going to reopen at 25% capacity, having data at the building and floor level to make sure that you're staying within those guardrails. And then, in the corporate office segment of our business, a lot of these workplace teams and real estate teams are looking at what their office will look like next year when everyone's back at work. And in a lot of cases, it's going to look very different from how it looked last year or even 2 years ago. And so density is becoming kind of this source of truth and objective data to help these companies manage change. If they have a portion of their workforce who's not going to be coming back into the office, what does that mean for your kind of assumptions around square footage requirements and space types? But this is not a sales call, so I will stop talking about sales stuff. Here's another example. So like the objective really, Scarlett, here is to start getting the lay of the land, prep for the site walk, and also get the customers buy-in in terms of budgetary approval. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Great. So the ask is, if you got a customer, you want to get started. If we get a floor plan, we can kind of kick off the process and walk you through this. After that, what do we do, Scarlett?
So with that floor plan where we have identified areas where their sensors might go, we're going to ask you to go on site or schedule time to go on site to walk the actual areas and doorways that we want to measure and what it looks like when we install. If we can skip to the next slide. So all of these areas that we've identified are what we think based on the floor plan where we want to take pictures and good measurements for, so we can get that deployment plan to you as soon as possible. What we don't have eyes and ears on, since you are on the ground, please look for any changes in the floor plans, any walls that are there or aren't there, any hidden elevators, emergency exit stairwells. We do have a lot of areas that, people say, oh, this is a staff-only entrance, therefore, people don't usually go down this stairwell, but we do need to cover those. Since the sensor is anonymous, I can't tell if it's a staff member that goes down or a customer or someone else. We need to cover everywhere that there is foot traffic in order to get that count right at the end of the day. While you're walking the site, please also look for any MDF and IDF closets so you can start thinking about cabling and where those runs are going to get to. For larger floor plans, if it's over 300 feet, of course, you're going to have to run to a junction box or a panel in order to reach that MDF or IDF closet. So if you can start thinking about that and where those runs are going to be, that'll be great. And then when you're there, please be ready to take the pictures and upload this to Notion so we can get a head start on the deployment plan for you.
Great. And just one quick note on, Scarlett mentioned the importance of covering every doorway. With, if you had, let's say you had a floor with 2 entrances and you only had sensors on 1 entrance, you had 100 people come in one way and 50 leave the other, density wouldn't be measuring those 50 exits. So you would still see 50 people in the room, even if the other 50 left via that censored doorway. It's a little counterintuitive, but that's why covering every entrance for the spaces that people want to measure are really important. Probably don't need to dwell too much on this, but there is documentation for the measurements and the types of photos that are ideal for us to ensure that you are set up for success. We'll follow up with an email and point you to these resources if you haven't seen them already. And just to reiterate in terms of why we require or request these types of pictures is it gives a full view for our team to guide you down a path for success. So there have been cases where a partner has not been fully enabled, or they've kind of gone and said, like, I've got this, I can go do this. And they go do an install and the install is done incorrectly. It's not to specification. The customer's upset. The partner's wasted time. They're upset. Our team is upset. Or not upset, just challenged, right? And so our goal really is your success, our joint customer success. And in order to do that, this information is really valuable, especially if you're a level 1 or level 2 partner. So identifying snafus and things and avoiding unforced errors is really part of the game here. Again, not to go into too much detail here, but this is an example of the type of measurements that we're looking for. Width of the doorway, the height of the door, floor to ceiling, so we can understand that the clearance above the doorway to install the sensor, and any obstructions that might be there. Things that come up are like, what, Scarlett? Exit signs, weird door handles and door swings. What else comes up?
Like if the ceilings heights are different inside and outside, we always have a preference of which side to mount. So getting those different measurements, if they are different, that's super important. Anything that's a low hanging light or a really bright fluorescent light next to it. If the pictures don't show it, please note that out for me so I know to avoid that when we make the deployment plan. Essentially, you are our eyes and ears and hands and feet on the ground. So by you taking good pictures and measurements, it gives me a sense of what the space is so we can give really good and precise measurements for the deployment plan of where to mount that. And we use Notion, and we're happy to provide this to you, just so a repository where to upload that. That way you have access to the pictures and measurements, and I have it too. And I am able to check on this live while you're uploading. So if you're on the ground and one of the pictures don't show me an exit sign or an obstruction, I can very easily reach you to say, hey, we need another picture of that doorway, or vice versa. If there's a question, you can very easily reach me as well.
Great. And on a separate, we'd be happy to, if you're interested in using this tool, which we highly recommend, we can walk you through exactly how to use it. It's very easy to just upload on your smartphone, upload the photo to where it belongs, and then our team receives that. So once we've scoped, we've walked the site, you get a sense of kind of pictures and measurements, deployment plan. That's where things get really interesting.
So why do you need this?
Why is this important? Yeah.
So this gives you a really clear tally of like the number of sensors you're going to need, the number of subscriptions that your customer is going to buy, and what mounting kits you're going to need in order to mount for the whole floor or whatever the customer says they're trying to measure. It also provides really clear instructions on how and where to mount for each sensor, and it gives you a visual one-pager per door for everybody to sign off on design, on cabling, on how we're going to mount to that wall surface. And we just want to show you really quickly what it looks like. For example, this is one door at a Boston HQ. So this is what a deployment plan will look like. You'll get one page per door, and it very clearly tells you the yellow flags. It tells you how high the sensor needs to be, left and right above the doorway where it needs to be, what the mounting kit that you're going to need to purchase. For example, this is a wall mount that's included, and any special notes that we want to call out for the install. And with all of that, there's a visual on the right of exactly that information. And if this is one that is the daisy chain sensor multiple point installs, and that shows you exactly how far apart they need to be, what the multiple mounting kits that you're going to need, and which way the sensor needs to face. So hopefully this is a one page that you can print off that's very clear for your installer, what exactly needs to be done. And I can, as long as I get really good pictures and measurements, this is something that I can turn around to you in a couple of days, and as well as the quote of everything added together, so you can present to your customers what exactly that cost is going to be.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, what Scarlett and her team does on what they do on a regular basis is nothing short of magic. So just want to reemphasize, please leverage her and her team. It's really remarkable, the speed at which we're able to produce this stuff and the quality of the work that we're able to enable for you. So in terms of the quote process, if we're going through this process, really, it's like once we get that number of sensors, our density sales rep can produce a quote to you, the reseller and installer. You can use that quote to go quote the end customer. And then once that quote is signed, you sign with us, and then we're off to the races. This is where it's all you guys. You're on the ground and doing the work.
Once the sensors are installed, how do you know it's online? Like I said, there's going to be a white EZ on the front of the device. If it's any other color, please do reach out to us. We can help you troubleshoot on the day of. And then the 4 red laser lights on the sensor LED tells you that it's provisioned and everything is working fine. Please reach out to us at install@density.io if anything does come up. If you have an install plan, please let us know of the install date so we can make sure someone is on call and available to you on the day of install instead if anything comes up. If the sensors are going to be on Wi-Fi or static IP, there's an extra step that you'll need to do with our Density app. I suggest downloading this anyways to troubleshoot anything that comes up on the day, and that's at mobile.density.io. And if you're doing a multi-point install and you have 2 sensors covering the same doorway, I'm going to need to know which sensor's on the left and which one's on the right when you're facing the LEDs, and the actual installed height and the distance between sensors for calibration.
I hope everyone's taking notes. Just kidding. We're here to answer questions, and just know that also this is a priority for us and our team to continue to evolve these materials. So it's obviously second nature for Scarlett and her team. Some of you are just getting started, and our goal is to get you to level 3. So Yeah, these are just a few examples of installs. Scarlett, I don't know if you want to know anything here specifically, but on the left, you can see there's a sensor over that doorway. Most of our deployments are on actual doorways, but you can treat a hallway in this example as a threshold where you could be sure that people are exiting that door by putting the sensor in the hallway. And as people cross through that threshold, they'll be counted. Here's an example of a multi-point install, again, wider than that 7.5 feet single doorway. And we've mounted 2 sensors here to capture this threshold. And then once you're installed and set up and the sensors are sending data, what's next, Scarlett?
We ask that you do a depth calibration, especially with COVID currently. There's not a lot of traffic under the doorways, and that's what we use for calibration. So we ask that you use our Density setup guide and our app and walk under the sensor a couple of times to generate some traffic so we can start the calibration for the customer ASAP. I'm also going to need, as I said in the very first slide, I'm going to need the sensor serial number and which doorway it went over and whether it's inside or outside. And once everything is installed online, the white LED is on and the 4 red laser lights are working, please send me the install picture, much like how you did taken pre-site walk, so we can match those diagrams to make sure everything is installed correctly, so we have record of what that sensor looks like within the space for the customer. All of this gets uploaded to the same form and table that you had provided before in Notion. So once you have access to that, all the information post-install also goes into that sheet.
Okay. 37 minutes. We tried to do it in 30. We're running a little long. Apologies. Are there any questions? Is this helpful to you folks? Would love to hear from anyone on the call here. All right, pretty silent crew. Let's see if there's any questions.
I think we have a hand raise from Zach.
Hey, Zach.
Hi there, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
I've got 2 questions. First question is a really boring one, but have you guys developed a standard for referencing doorways onto floor plans that we're able to follow so that we, in any building on any floor plan, when we're trying to tie up serial numbers or troubleshoot at a later date, have you got a sort of bibliography or something, a way in which you're kind of logging these doorways?
Yeah, once we have the doorway assignments, they are put on our dashboard and linked to the doorway. So in the future, if you say, hey, that doorway outside room 352, we're going to know the serial number. That also applies when we have to RMA or swap out a sensor. We can easily replace that in that data stream. So once it's attached the first time, that doorway will always be tied to that serial number.
Okay. The second question is more of a sales question for you, Adam. We're just getting started at the moment. We've just received our first 50 sensors from you in London, and Scarlett, I think you're working with our guys to help us get going. The question I have is about the challenge of when you realize that you're going to have to put 2 sensors above a doorway. And so you've got to go back to client and basically say, hey, we have a problem. We don't have the ceiling clearance or this, that, and the other. We need to put 2 sensors here. And I can kind of get my head around the fact is you need 2 pieces of hardware. How are you addressing it with clients when you've got to explain to them it's 2 pieces of hardware, it's also 2 separate software licenses, right? Because it's quite a challenging thing to have to come back to people, because they might naturally say to you, well, this is a limitation of your equipment, and what have you.
Sure. Yeah, Zach, that's a really good question. It does crop up sometimes. So first thing I would do, is contact, the sales rep that you've been working with, and explain the situation. Our policy is 1 unit hardware, 1 unit software. Now, if you come to us and say, like, look, our customer's not going to be able to stomach this, there are creative things that we can do to help you and make sure that from a commercial perspective that you're successful. So that's how I'd handle it, and happy to follow up with you offline right after this session or later this week if that'd be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
And another thing I would just say is, density is a really interesting size right now. So, we've raised enough capital and we're large enough and our customer base is large enough, so we're not going to be going anywhere, but we're not, a Siemens type company, right? And so really what we care about is ensuring your success and your end customer success. And that's not to say we'll do everything under the sun to ensure that happens, but as the head of sales, my objective is to make sure that we're successful in market together, and we wouldn't want to have a small issue impede growth within an account. For instance, we want to do right by the customer. Great question, Zach. Thanks for jumping in. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, I guess we will wrap there. This was the first time we've done this, so you've all participated in the first. As we continue to build out this programming, expect to hear more from Scarlett and some other folks on the team. Megan's on here from our marketing team, and Joette has been also from the marketing team, helping out a lot with our channel partners. And so we're always happy to make ourselves available. Feel free to reach out in terms of next steps. Really our goal is to help you understand level 1, 2, and 3 and help you make progress and be successful in markets. So feel free to reach out to Scarlett or myself, and we'll get you going. Thanks all.